Sustainability is the ability of biological systems to remain diverse and productive indefinitely. Humans are one such biological system among all other natural processes existing on the Earth today. The length of time which humans can remain living on the Earth depends on the attitude taken towards the concept of sustainability. There are a number of occupational health and safety considerations when undertaking sustainability-related work. You may be taking measurements of a process to determine its efficiency. This may involve accessing equipment on the site, which may be in operation at the time the measurements are taken. Hazards associated with this, such as stored energy, toxic emissions, live voltage, being in close proximity to heavy equipment, and potential accidental modification of this equipment, must all be taken into consideration. Effective coordination with other workers in the form of site inductions and JSA completion can aid in the awareness of these and other factors related to the work. Australia's key piece of environmental legislation is the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. It aims to protect Australia's environment in a number of ways. It requires any project which involves the development of land to undergo an environmental impact assessment. The assessment determines whether the project could potentially damage the number of threatened species and communities, pollute water bodies and their associated wildlife, or affect heritage-listed sites. The Act also lists threatened species, identifies their habitats, and includes recovery plans to increase their numbers. It also regulates wildlife trade, declares conservation zones, lists environmentally threatening processes, and specifies penalties for the breaches of the Act. The importance of sustainability has been well established and given widespread attention in recent decades. It's now being recognised at the highest level that conducting work in an unsustainable manner impacts on the future generations to inherit the Earth. They, just as us, have the right to a clean Earth. A clean Earth is one free from excessive pollution, contaminated water supplies, nuclear fallout, and the effects of climate change. Damage done to the Earth by the energy sector can no longer be blamed on ignorance of the consequences, as it has been in the past. Negligence in regard to sustainability is now met with criminal prosecution. The greenhouse effect is one of the major sustainability-related challenges that the Earth faces today. On average, about 1/3 of the solar radiation from the Sun that hits the Earth is reflected back to space. Of the remainder, some is absorbed by the atmosphere, but most is absorbed by the oceans and the land. As a consequence, the Earth's surface becomes warm and emits infrared radiation. The greenhouse gases trap the IR radiation, thus warming up the atmosphere. The greenhouse effect causes global warming and subsequently climate change. Fossil fuels can be thought of as solidified and liquefied carbon. The energy nature has put into creating these forms is released in the burning of them, which returns the carbon in gaseous form back to the atmosphere. As you can see here, fossil fuel burning is seen to be the major contributor to the greenhouse effect. As the effects of climate change become more and more apparent, world leaders have put certain behaviours and goals into action in an attempt to curb the effect. The Kyoto Protocol is an international treaty which sets national caps on greenhouse gas emissions. Just about all the world's nations have signed. These emissions caps work in conjunction with national emissions trading schemes. These schemes treat the ability to pollute as a scarcity, which must be purchased. The Emissions Reduction Fund is a voluntary scheme that provides incentives for Australian farmers and landholders to adopt new practices and technologies to reduce Australia's greenhouse gas emissions. Australia has also set a renewable energy target in which 23.5% of Australia's energy is generated by renewable sources by 2020. Individual states also have their own independent targets. The role of environmental regulation bodies is to enforce environmental legislation. They conduct investigations into incidents and breaches, prosecuting where necessary. The local environmental regulation is the WA Department of Water and Environmental Regulation. Even if an organisation were to completely lack an environmental conscience, sustainability should still be in their best interests. There are many economic upsides to sustainability. Sustainable processes aim to output their product using less energy. This greater energy efficiency means greater savings. A more expensive appliance may actually save you money over its entire life cycle if it operates at a high efficiency. This is indicated by its energy rating. The disposal and treatment of hazardous byproducts incur large costs. Sustainable practices aim to avoid the creation of these waste byproducts where possible, eliminating the need to have to deal with them at all. In most developed countries, there's a lot of legislation in place aiming to deter businesses from unsustainable practices. If a business is not run in a sustainable manner, it puts itself at risk to legal prosecution and heavy fines. Volkswagen was found guilty of cheating emissions tests and were fined $5.7 billion. Energy-efficient methods can be employed on both large and small scales. On the large scale, energy-hungry operations such as mining projects can audit their existing processes looking for more efficient techniques. Some examples may include exchanging haul trucks for conveyor belts, replacing control valves with VSDs, and crushing ore to the optimum particle size for each successive crushing. Regular audits should be undertaken in order to ensure optimum efficiency, ensure proposed changes get actioned on, and to keep pace with sustainable technology advances as they unfold. On a smaller scale, there are a number of changes that any individual consumer of power can make. Incandescent bulbs can be replaced with compact fluorescent or LED, electric water heating for gas heating, thermal efficient windows and doors, and low-flow shower heads are but a few of the many product changes that you can make. Efficiency principles can even come into play at the power generation stage in the form of cogeneration. The heat produced from a fuel creates a high pressure which drives a prime mover in turbine-driven generation. This heat is then traditionally expelled. With cogeneration, the heat is used for water or space heating, increasing the overall efficiency of the operation. When monitoring or auditing energy efficiency, there are several key performance indicators to keep in mind. These are electricity use, water use, waste, gas use, chemical disposal, and materials. Traditional power generation involves the burning of fossil fuels, which depletes their reserves and pollutes the atmosphere. Renewable energy sources neither consume fossil fuels nor pollute the atmosphere. The present consumption of fossil fuels will soon deplete them completely, making the switch to renewables inevitable. If we make the switch sooner rather than later, we can also put a stop to the negative environmental effects. Examples of renewable energy come in the form of wind, solar PV, solar thermal, hydroelectric, geothermal, and tidal technologies. Small-scale renewable energy generation is now possible and commonplace in the form of photovoltaic arrays sitting on the roofs of houses. Sunlight hits the semiconductor material of the photovoltaic cell. This results in a DC voltage across the cell, which produces a current. Just like in conventional batteries, many cells are joined together in series and parallel to create adequate amounts of voltage and current produced by the array. The DC current is then fed into an inverter, which produces an AC output at the correct amplitude and phase for the grid. A meter then keeps track of the power usage, which may now be either supplying or consuming from the grid. As we are all consumers of the world's resources, we all share the responsibility of the toll that this takes on the world. Education in sustainability ensures that everyone is aware of this and equips everyone with the skills to minimise their own personal impact, as well as making sustainable decisions within their job role.